And then halfway through the sketchbook is my second semester, so this is where it starts. So looking at research for coats, collars, more development for print. Looking at manipulation of fabric through elastic shirring, gathered holes, development of final print. My final fabric board for FMP. Development of the dress and the print. Then looking at archive trench coats, research. Looking at pockets for trousers and pockets for the coat. More pocket details. Looking at Cecily Banson and Simone Rocha, garment studies. Then my first coat toile development. My tap packs developed from first semester. Smocking development using princess pleater or through elastic, or doing it myself and gathering it, and just this process, which one I decided to go with. Toile amendments for my dress, sleeves, and then print development, looking at the different ways I could apply it to the dress and how scale could be get bigger and less intense as the print goes down the dress. More final print development, my final screens. Colour development, colour testing for the final garment, for getting the right opaqueness and using standard and opaque and then testing it out. Colourways. The process of my print development for my dress, different panels, the smocking print placement and how I printed it, carry-on print placement, and then this process of sewing it together. The dress without sleeves and just adjustments, making it more in at the waist, the finished dress and altering the bodice, doing final alterations from fittings, and then more for my coat development, carrying on with the print and looking at scale of how big I want it on the coat, either A0 scale or A1. More print development, just looking at sleeves and how I definitely wanted them on the arm, lots of volume. More sleeve development, garment studies, and then the process of the print placement, from getting the screens to the original print of embroidery, to the actual process, putting the coat together and the cuffs, looking at different ways I can put it together, top stitching, final details, and then looking at the lining of the coat, final coat look, and then looking at elastic ruching. These are my samples throughout the process of the dress. Colours of the dress on the garment. This is the leftover of what it's like when the smocking's ravelled out and when it's tight together. And then different thicknesses of bonding the fabric, and different edges, to looking at how I finish off the trims. More print samples for final prints. testing buttonholes for the coat on the bonded fabric, my final colour chips and colourways, final prints, and then this is the scale when I was doing it on the stand. More development of this print using metallic binder instead of foils. And this is the rest of my print and process journal for pattern cutting, so collars. And then these are the amendments for semester 2. Knit amendments, toile amendments, looking at different ways to put elastic in, putting netting in for the sleeve, choosing cottons for the dress, smocking, coat, sleeve, choosing bonding web, the coat, amendments, print, more print, coat lining, and then trousers. All about trousers, jumpsuit, trousers. This is my follow-on collection sketchbook. Initial concept board. Initial research on Goze woman and the movement of these blind women who used to travel through Japan, and they were musicians, and that's what they did through the Japanese countryside, looking at their silhouettes and a lot of movement, and sort of just following the way, looking at the way they dress, the fringing, and their lifestyles, their surroundings, what they wore, how it was all very layered. And then I was looking at, obviously they travelled through Japan, so I started looking at other walking artists who is Hamish Fulton, and sort of that connection of experiencing our surroundings and the art through walking. Looking at his continuous journey and what he basically represented through his walking and what he found through art. So this is one of his exhibitions. So I'm just sort of looking at that for like print references, more development on my concept. Then I started looking at the 1970s and looking at like sort of very floaty silhouettes, and for example Zandra Rhodes, Bill Gibb, Amelia Pucci, Missoni, and just a garment studies of those, and then did a more up-to-date modern approach, which is also very layered. I then started looking at knit and doing my own silhouette collages. More silhouette collages, sort of big, large, very layered, but quite floaty to show the movement of the continuous journey. Comparing those to the Goze woman. And then silhouette gestures from my collages. Then I look at pattern cutting, as I wanted to pattern cut some trousers. So I was looking at specific Japanese pattern cutting, which are different ways to basically find volume, as that's like sort of following on from my original concept. So Tomoko, Japanese pattern cutting, and then I was looking at Izumaki and those silhouettes and comparing them to Goze Woman. And then looking at my own collages, mixing together Goze Woman and Izumaki and the sort of different contemporary but also original Japanese travel wear. Baggy lining, just to see how if I wanted to make a coat, what it would look like. More drawings from my silhouettes. More silhouette development, just like rough ideas to get volume and floatiness. Kimono research, and I started looking at patterns and sort of showing movement in quite a sketchy way through mark making for print. Pattern cutting research, more Japanese ways, like the Aido tuxedo. How to sort of get that ruched. So I started doing my own pattern cutting for my trousers. Then I started looking at how I could design the ruched hole and gathered hole from the pattern cutter at Tomoko and apply that to my own work. More trouser development, looking more at drapery. And then I started developing the rest of the range. More silhouette for line-up research. Then the original trouser toile and amendments. More on the toile and amendments. And look at more print development as well as silhouette for the rest of my range plan. Sort of bringing graphic florals, keeping with the florals from my other collection, F&B collection, constantly on the move, but making it quite like graphic, contemporary, graphic lines and edges. And then this is my fabric board for my follow-on collection and my swatches for my follow-on collection for print. And then this is a follow-on collection print development. More colour development, final prints. And then these are so all my print, different print. Screens. Some samples which I haven't used for my final prints. And then I started doing some moulage for follow-on and looking at draping coats and just getting lots of drapery. Some more drapery and drawings. Moulage development. More trouser development, starting to make them in the green silk to get that full drapery. And these are my final trousers. And then this goes on to competition development and just more drawings in general for follow-on. So this is a competition connection communication. Looking at Alzheimer's and dementia and how they're connected, and how you connect to your brain and through people and through textiles and lots of your sensory, the 5 senses. So looking at sort of jewellery and how the brain works, and textured fabric, costume jewellery, and like just loads of like bits and bobs. Silhouette reference. And then I did some embroidery for coat, the final embroidery samples. And my final lineup and the final coat. This is my design development for my full-on collection. And the lineup. More design development. This is my promotional sketchbook for second semester. So just looking at the Tukai passport, which basically would hold your passport profile. So when you, for the renting process, when you rent a piece of clothing from Tukai, you get a passport and you can have your own style and make it really personable. So here's the development of the book and looking at different ways I could make it sort of A5 size, and how to, if screen printing, or if I wanted it like this, and or vinyls. So I decided to go with vinyls instead of screen printing, but I screen printed the background from my collection of Perfectly Imperfect. So I did Twice for Good and sampling the front cover, looking at different colours, orange or silver. Testing it out on bonded fabric, and then I looked at how to make a stamp. So I had my own logo of Tukai and 2 different ones to be able to stamp the passport once you've rented something, and it has my slogan on the top. And then that's the finished model. And then following on from last term, I've made my own headscarves for branding, with my branding on it. So I tried digital printing, sublimation printing, and that was all in uni, but it came out quite faded. So I ended up going with print fab and looking at different. So I looked at Georgette, faux silk, and crepe de chine. And these were the samples which came out. And then the final labels for my care labels, which I screen printed, which were at first were quite wobbly, but then they came out quite clean. My final swing tags, which are follow on from last term, different colours. And then I started looking at photo shoots, ideas for what I wanted to do for my promotional posters and magazine. So I went for more of like a lookbook. So this is the first shoot, which of my toiles, just to sort of test how it looked and to get the volume. So I did it on the beach, and then I also did one in fish and chips, which sort of juxtaposed the whole look, made it sort of a bit more fun and contemporary. These are just all my shoots, and then I did a rough storyboard of my photo shoot for my final collection, and this is of the dress and the coat and their final looks and the bodice. In the forest as well, and up by Salisbury Plains with lots of open space.